One day I'm gonna be everything I wanna be. I don't let it get the most of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be everything I'm gonna be. My future right in front of me. One day I'm gonna be free. I wanna be free. So let me be free. One day I'm gonna be free. Mentally and physically, emotionally and spiritually. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be free. I'm standing at the crossroads. I'm feeling like a lost soul. Don't know where I wanna go, but all I know is I wanna be free. They're telling me to let it be, but that just ain't in me, no. Jealousy and envy, but all I see is I wanna be free. See everything I wanna be, exactly what I'm gonna be. Don't let it get the most of me. Eventually, I'm gonna be free. See everything I wanna be, exactly what I'm gonna be. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna be free. Let me be free. One day I'm gonna be free. Mentally and physically, emotionally and spiritually. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be free. I told them take their aim off me. Stop trying to get a name off me. If they would just let me be, I'm gonna be free. I told them take them chains off me and throw away the locks and keys. If they would just let me be, eventually I'm gonna be free.
They're back.
What up, though? We're here a little early tonight for episode of Dominant Effect and Marsh Bishop. We got Aaron Olinger. And Mike Ball wasn't going to be with us tonight. He's out on the campaign trail. So we're going to miss him tonight. But I'm sure he may pop in here later on. So what's up, everybody? Glad you was able to tune in. I know we probably won't get everybody that normally on here because we're doing this a little early, being that New Year's is coming up and all. And also today is actually the anniversary of the Dominant Effect. So this makes 2 years. So this is our 2-year anniversary today.
Great.
So we decided we're gonna do it today and skip the New Year's Eve thing. And because we know everybody going to be out celebrating the new year, 2026, 2025, kind of went by really quick. And the way things are going, 2026 is going to be a sure enough banger for a lot of different reasons. So we're going to jump into this tonight. We're going to put a lot of information out of here. Now, some of this stuff that you may be familiar with, because the ones that watch on the regular know that this is some of the stuff that we've been talking about. And this is stuff that we've been telling people about for several months, in hopes that what we were saying would be incorrect, but it wasn't. As much as the stuff that we do put out, hoping that it doesn't end up going that route. It's from the cycles and the way things are going, it seems exactly the way it's going to be. But but we're going to jump into this because I know some people probably seen it briefly because they really haven't put a whole lot of talk into it. And there's reasons why they're not talking about this, but we're going to talk about it tonight. And what we're going to talk about tonight is silver. And over the weekend, you may have noticed that silver did something that it only does whenever the system is under pressure. It surged, and it surged hard, and then crashed just as fast. Now, that's not a random situation. That's not a retail hype. That's an actual warning light. And tonight, we're going to break down why silver moved the way it did and what China's influence had to do with that. And at this moment, what that could mean for us and the U.S. government. And also for the regular people who feel like these rules keep changing and they really don't understand exactly what it is that's going on. We're going to shed a little light into that as well. Mm-hmm. So to jump on this, everybody knows when you're dealing with silver and gold and trying to put the comparison between the two, silver is way smaller compared than gold. And also dealing with stocks and bonds. And that's exactly why this particular thing matters, because it sits on the intersection of money, precious metals, and the infrastructure being, solar, EVs, defense contracts, electronics, all of it uses it. And when that silver spikes violently, it usually means that the leverage that you have is being stretched by somebody else. And that sudden drop didn't mean that silver failed. It meant that a margin and the margin mechanics behind that kicked in and it forced you to sell. Liquefying, crunching, risk management, risk containment, however you want to put it. That's what they did. And the key takeaway to that is that silver doesn't cause instability. It revealed it. It revealed exactly where that instability was. So we over the weekend, and we've been talking about it for several weeks now, how gold and silver prices has been going up. A lot of people paid attention to the gold. It really wasn't paying attention to the silver. Now, we were talking about the silver a lot because that was what we were buying. And right towards the end of 24, beginning of 25, silver was actually running pretty low. It was running right around $20 to $22 an ounce. And at that time is when we first started telling people that they needed to start jump in, buy silver, buy gold. And some people did, some people didn't. And it started to steadily climb gradually. So it went to 20, then it went from 25 to 28, jumped up to 30, and just kind of hovered for a little bit. And then it slowly started going up. Well, over the weekend, something happened and it jumped almost to $80 an ounce, which is a huge bull run from early 25 to the end of 25. It basically went up dramatically. Mm-hmm. Everybody who had bought silver low, like we did, in one aspect, you thinking, okay, I just tripled my money. Some that bought it in the $40, $50 range was like, yeah, I almost doubled my money. which is good in speaking because you thinking that you actually made a come up from that. But the reason for it rising the way it did is what made it volatile because there's a lot of twists and turns to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we'll go back and talk about has this always been this way? Has silver always just been this way? No, it hasn't been. But it has happened before in earlier times. So when I was doing my research, one of the things that I seen was back in ancient Rome, and we're talking, and I'm using ancient Rome as an example because we was talking about on previous shows how we had these currencies that were the top tier currencies, and these currencies end up falling. And the U.S. dollar is also one of them currencies that has stood its test in time, but is also facing a lot of problems right now, and is going right back into this. So back in ancient Rome, Rome used silver coinage, what they called denarius.
Mm-hmm.
And they used that to like fund wars, and the silver content dropped, and inflation rose, the trust collapsed, and then the empire basically weakened and end up failing. Back in the 16th and 17th century in Spain, you had massive silver inflows that came from the Americas, which caused inflation, currency instability, and it showed that silver flows can distort an entire economy, and it can do it fairly quickly. Now, here in the U.S., back in the 19th century, the same debate was over the whole silver gold thing, and it wasn't academic. It was about who controlled the money, whether it was the government that controlled the money or was it the markets that controlled it. So silver has moved violently before in larger systems, and it usually cracked because it was small, it wasn't leveraged, and it touched both the industry side and the money side. So when silver behaved abnormally, monetary stress was already present, even if it hasn't surfaced yet. So right now we're going through the same thing. We're living through a monetary crisis here in the U.S. We're dealing with the de-dollarization, where the dollar has dropped well under 26%. Our value is dropping. Inflation is going up. We're dealing with, we've been through a period of quantitative tightening. Now we're going into quantitative easing, which is also going to be causing a problem that we're going to start talking about on here too. But Aaron, I'm going to ask you this question here. So why did the silver surge and then crash so suddenly? And why did it do it right now?
Well, the demand is out there. The industrial demand is such that they cannot mine enough to supply the industrial demand, let alone the retail demand, or even the critical metal demand. But there's some things that happened in the month of December that has led us to the point that we're at today. And I'm going to give you a little history on it. Now, where you brought up quantitative easing. Now, quantitative easing is where you're stimulating the economy by pouring money into it. Now, short-term results, it makes money cheaper. Industry can get that money and get it out there and expand their businesses, bring in enough extra money to hire more employees. The negative is on the public because long-term it creates inflation. Yes, your wages could go up, but the rate of inflation may go up higher. Everything's going to cost more across the board: cars, homes, your medical, food. I mean, basic essentials that you need, even school education. Everything's going to cost more. So we've then gone into this quantitative easing. That was started on December the 10th. The Federal Reserve started. Now, they add a little money, a little at a time. It's like putting frogs into a pot. You turn the temperature up a little at a time in hopes that you can boil those frogs without them realizing it. They want to raise the temperature on the American public and put them under pressure. And every time they raise the temperature just a hair, you get used to it, and then they can move it again, and there's not a whole lot of complaints. Whereas if they turned it up to boiling and the American public was in that situation, you probably have riots and civil unrest. But what began on December 10th was the Federal Reserve had restarted quantitative easing. Then on December 15th, an event happened that's unprecedented. I couldn't find it anywhere else. The U.S. Treasury Secretary placed a call to her counterpart in Beijing. The call lasted 47 minutes. Now, anytime that they have talked to each other, those calls only last usually 10 or 15 minutes. This call lasted 47 minutes, which is very unusual. And allegedly, she was asking permission for the United States to be able to survive, continue as an economic power. Um, what we see on the surface right now is everything's well, stock market's at all times high, gold and silver's at all times high. Uh, People are employed, jobs are going well. That's on the surface. That's bread and circuses, or so, and or what Nero called, what was it? Yeah, bread and circuses. That's what he called it. So that's a distraction. That's the theater. That's to entertain the Americans and give them a false flag, basically, and they don't realize that what they're seeing is fake. But behind the scenes, the drama that occurs is much worse. Now I'm gonna give you an example. Um, when she called, she was begging China not to crash the U.S. dollar at this time. The U.S. wants to be able to control its own crash. I mean, we're they're expecting us to pick up $2 trillion in debt to the national debt in 2026 alone. So, and we're borrowing money to be able to make the interest payment on the national debt. So that shows right there, we're working to pay a debt that can never be repaid. So that says that basically that our economy technically is dead. We're just dying a slower death, and they're trying to control the death rate. Uh, but China, after talking to them, they agreed not to crash the economy. But then behind closed doors, they made 3 separate phone calls. Okay, on the first call, the first was in Washington. That occurred at 3:17 a.m. U.S. was asking China not to attack them economically. The U.S. needs to sell 5.2 trillion in new debt this year to 2026 just to keep the government going for 12 months. 5.2 trillion. I'm not making that up. Okay. Janet Yellen begged China not to crash a system that's already crashing itself. She wanted, well, the U.S. wants to control that speed of that crash. They want it to be slow. China, on the other hand, wants to speed it up. Then the second phone call that occurred was 6 hours after that phone call to Washington. That's where Beijing called China to talk to the Saudi crown prince. They asked one question, and China asked the Saudi crown prince, "Are you ready?" His answer was, "We've been ready for 2 years to end that petrodollar agreement." He said, for 2 years, China and Saudi Arabia has been working on alternative payment systems to bypass the US dollar. And it's something. Right now, Japan has almost been crashing our bond market because Japan was one of the biggest buyers of our US debt. But because their markets is worse than anything I've ever seen right now, Japan is liquidating US debt faster than they acquired it, which that hurts us substantially. Now, they're not doing it on purpose. They're doing it for their own nation's survival. They don't have any other choice. They got to get liquid to cover how badly their markets are performing. Now, can we go to Europe and ask for help? No, Europe is broke. If they can't help themselves, how can they help us? So that's totally out of the question. But Saudi Arabia, who, keep in mind, our government and our militaries kept their royal family in office and protected them from outside nations wanting to invade them, and against military coups that kept their Saudi royal family in power. The way they repaid us is they're signing on to China's plan. So a third meeting occurred at that point. This was at 11:30 p.m. Uh, uh, Riyadh time. That call lasted only 3 minutes. The Saudi finance minister called a called a bunker outside of Moscow. Russia has something basically that Saudis need. Russia has a battle-tested way to survive U.S. sanctions. Here recently, Russia's economy has been thriving under U.S. sanctions, and Saudi Arabia, afraid of U.S. sanctions, wanted to know what was their method. Can you clue us in? Can you plug us into your system? And Russia basically told them that we built what they call shadow rails. That's alternative payment systems and trade agreements with different with different nations, and it makes the U.S. sanctions totally irrelevant. They're ineffective. So Saudis asked, could they merge their oil system with the Russian payment system, so they themselves and the Russians can both be outside the U.S. control? And the Russians agreed. So the stage has been set for what started to take place over what they call the Ghost Week, which was the 23rd up till today. But I'm going to stop there for right now, Bishop.
So when we was talking about China, you got to think about this, though, because China's influence over this silver, it kind of mirrors a playbook that they already done before.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go back to 2010 when they had the rare earths precedent, and that's where China restricted rare earth minerals from Japan, and there was no announcement, just hard friction. The prices exploded, Western supply chains froze, and then the government panicked after the move, but not before the move. They had no idea that this was even coming on. Now, China is not the largest miner, but it dominates the refining and the processing of the silver, and it controls that whole downstream steep that can basically prioritize domestic industry. Now, but why does that matter? Because this isn't about cutting the supply overnight. It's about creating uncertainty, which forces stockpiling, raises premiums, and it just breaks that just-in-time manufacturing type deal, because China doesn't weaponize its resources loudly. It lets the markets do it for them, and then the damage that comes off of that is what they pick up. Now, I was talking about the margins just now, and this is one of the reasons why we were able to kind of get out of that today. Me and you were talking about it the other day, and I told we had that holiday stint where everybody was off, and when me and you was talking the other day, I said, now watch, they're gonna be calling everybody to come back in, because remember me and you was talking about that cap that they had set prematurely, that once it hit, I think it was 73, if I'm not mistaken.
73.50.
Right. So once it hit that, it was supposed to stop. That was the cap. It was going to stop. But what happened was it went 72, jumped completely over 73, hit 74. It didn't hit the cap, didn't even pick it up, but it kept climbing.
Yep.
So at that point, now it's a panic mode. But we were talking about these margins, and these margins is the reason why they were able to come in today. And even though it was, they were out for blood today, they were still able to get it to come back into focus, dealing with their margins. And the margin hikes are basically like a risk control tool. Um, not a judgment on silver itself, but when volatility threatens to basically clean house, it basically exchanges that act to kind of protect the system that it has set up. So even if it hurts the traders in the current environment, then that thin liquidity of the higher leverage, it kind of lets that silver can continue rising unchecked to risk any kind of cascading defaults. So if I'm not mistaken, it was at 20,000, and then it jumped from 20,000. They changed it to 25,000. So then everybody who had the silver in the market, they had to make up that money, but they had to do it today.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have, okay, you got to the end of the week to make up that margin. You had to come up with that money today, or you lost it. So they was, but even with that, it signaled that the move was serious enough to scare the financial system to the point that they had to start revamping stuff, and they had to do it right now. It wasn't nothing that they could hold and do, because if they did, it would have hit over 80 and kept going. Because if I'm not mistaken, in China right now, silver is over 80. It's like close to like 80. It was like 89 or something like that it closed off today.
I think it was 89 today.
Yeah, but then we ended up having it drop. But the only reason why it dropped and it stayed right there within that 70s, with that between 73, 75 range, right, because of people that was actually buying it. So
Mm-hmm.
the ones that actually hold physical silver, they're fine. It's the ones that had the stocks in these companies is the ones that suffered the most.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you would be, what does this mean for the government right now?
Well, right now we're in what they call liquidity crisis. And that's major, because our money's already in trouble. It's been debased, it's been devalued. And now people are having to show up to pay up. And if the dollar is worth less, it pays less. I mean, our market on silver and gold is the COMEX market. That's mostly paper contracts. The Chinese market is mostly a physical market where you're actually trading real silver and gold that you're going to hold in your hand. So the contracts that are on silver may never exist. I mean, they're on silver being mined up out of the ground that hasn't even been mined yet. So they're mostly fictitious, where China's actually holding the physical. As long as the contracts are sold and traded as normal, everything is normal. But when the physical silver is demanded for the delivery, they will quickly find out there's not enough silver to go around to cover all the contracts. And that's what creates the squeeze. That's what has us in the problems that we're into today, because too many of our people are holding paper contracts and wasn't holding the physical. Now, because of the squeeze, demand and supply, which they was really ignoring for leverage, it matters once again. The physical demand of gold and silver is going to eventually set the price for gold and silver. We're not quite there, but we're well on the way. Right now, it's the contracts that's setting the price. But after today, that a lot of things are going to start changing. I mean, a trap was set on December 23rd that China set up. Now, they already made their phone calls. They already got their allies on their side of how they're going to do it and what they're going to do. So silver on December 27th was trading at $76, which going into Monday morning things, that was considered still kind of high. But you had 5 major banks that have been bleeding at over $30 billion in losses this year alone, because they kept betting silver short. And with Ghost Week, China knew that there'd be low trading going on because all the top people and investors and a lot of the market people would be gone on vacations. They're in the Hamptons, they're out on hot islands, or they're up skiing somewhere. And they knew that Ghost Week would be December 23rd to 29th. They knew that they set before they left a stop switch, like you said, at 73.50. But once silver became vertical, it didn't come back down. It continued to go up. So it literally jumped over and started taking off like a damn rocket ship. Uh, but right now, when silver went vertical, China started buying it up. That's what ran it up to $83 an ounce over Ghost Week. And not only was they buying up the existing supply, they were willing to pay a premium much higher than what an ounce of silver costs so that they could acquire it, because they knew once they did that, when people came back on Monday and the markets opened back up, their markets would have first shot at it early in the morning, and they would set the new price of silver right around 3:30 a.m. in the morning, and then our markets would open at 9:30, and our banks would be scrambling for reserves that China recently bought up to prevent them from having it. They would create a liquidity crisis here that would put our financial banking system at risk of collapse. I mean, that the trap was brilliant to me. So with the price going at 83 an ounce, JP Morgan prior to this weekend, they reversed their shorts and they went long on silver. And I don't think that's by accident, because China announced a rumor that on January 2nd, they might stop the exportation of silver. If you keep in mind, if China bans the exportation of silver to the world, that's going to reduce the silver availability by 50%. Mexico is number one producer of silver. China is number two in the world. So JP Morgan had to have got wind of that for them to go from a short position to a long position on it. They're sitting on almost 800 million ounces in their vaults. And they were for a long time suppressing the price of silver and keeping it as low as they could. But in 2023, I believe it was, they was fined $1 billion for manipulation of the silver market, which they took it on the chin like they didn't even feel it. I mean, they've been making so much money off of silver, they didn't even care. But with the supply cut almost in half, going into next week, if that actually happens and China bans the exportation of it, China and JP Morgan will corner the silver market. China's going to corner it and almost can play run me up, and any nation at once is going to have to pay whatever price China's setting on it, because again, they account for 50% of it. And by them pulling out, that creates a rarity, and the rarity in itself for supply and demand is going to cause prices to run up. Then JP Morgan's sitting on the reserve. If Tesla, the companies that make the what do they call them, the things that collect the sun and give you power,
solar panels.
Yeah, the solar panels. And then you got Samsung. Look at what they did. I mean, Samsung is practically South Korea. They employ so many people there. Samsung come out with a battery recently to go in these hybrid cars that will get 600 miles to a charge. And when you have to plug it up to charge it up, it will fully charge in 9 minutes. It's that fast. I mean, you can pull into a gas station, plug your car up, go in, use the bathroom, shop around for a little bit, buy you a few things, come back out, and your car's fully charged in 9 minutes. There's nobody else out there's got that, but that battery requires an enormous amount of silver. Satellites are going up in space need silver. Heck, a cruise missile requires a couple hundred ounces of silver. I mean, if anyone's advancing in technology and energy into the future, silver and gold is going to be essential. China's getting ready to cut 50% of it. And like I said, if they can get Mexico on board, oh man, they can set the price at whatever they want. And then JP Morgan, with what they're sitting on as a reserve, if Tesla needs some, or the people that are making that special battery, if they need it, they can go to them. They've got it. They're willing to sell it, but they're going to say, well, what are you offering me? And when you tell them, that's not enough. You got to do better than that. And you might say, well, it's only $75 an ounce. You might have to double that before we even talk to you. I mean, a person that corners the market can set those kind of standards. And everybody went into emergency meetings this weekend. And with quantitative easing going on, massive layoffs that are beginning in January in the U.S. industries, and then the fact that the government may shut down somewhere between January 15th and January 30th, 2026, for a person that's prepared for it, I'm going to say it's going to be called, I'm going to call it the big squeeze. But if you get blindsided and you don't see what's coming, 2026 is going to be the year of chaos, because it's going to be fierce. And like I said, the news is giving you the idea that everything is wonderful. It's straight propaganda. But in the reality behind the scenes, China set a trap and the banks fell into it. And January 2nd, that trap may slam shut. But let me stop there for right now.
Well, I think that trap was the trap was set once they called and put them on to not raising up the price.
Right.
So that automatically put that out there, you know. But with the question that I asked about what does it mean for the government right now, I think that it's me personally. I think it's not about actually the silver price. It's about the continuity and national resilience over top of that. Because when a metal is tied to like energy and defense and infrastructure, anything that shows stress, government is going to quietly try to assess those priorities, stockpile, resource it from the other allies, and just kind of do some kind of strategic classification. Because on our end, we'll hear reassurance, but in all actuality, that volatility, it triggers planning automatically, because these governments don't need silver to be cheap; it needs it to be available. And once you start putting a strain on that availability, that's what's going to cause the problems. Now, like we said, China isn't the place that has the most silver. It has the places that refines it. Now, if Mexico, like you said, turns around and we also seen some things on there where China has talked to Mexico, trying to get them to go along with them and not let any silver out of the country. Basically, put a embargo, if you will, on the country to where you couldn't take anything out of it. That would cause a problem. That right there would cause a problem. And it's like a lot of the stuff that's going on right now that you see, take like, for instance, what's going on in Venezuela and what happened over in Nigeria the other day. And, you know what I mean? It's like they're using these different excuses as to reason why they're in these particular places, but they're in those particular places not because of what's really going on there, but what's up under the ground. In Venezuela, they want the oil. In Nigeria has the biggest deposits of uranium. Right under Nigeria is Niger, which is big in gold. Go over to the left a little bit, you got Burkina Faso, which is huge in gold. So a lot of these places that they've been tapping into and saying that, like, okay, it's a problem there and we got to go, you know, fix this problem over here. There's drugs coming out of Venezuela, so we got to go there. Bullshit. Ain't no drugs coming out of Venezuela. Not enough to where that we got to do what we've been doing over there. and to be taking oil tankers and all that. You know what I mean? That automatically shows where we're going with that. In Nigeria, you're saying that we bomb into because they were persecuting Christians. When did that become our business as to what goes on over there? It hasn't been. But they have something that you want, something that you need, and that's typically what all these countries are trying to do right now. And actually, it's U.S. and China the most that you hear about, because they're trying to take over all the resources. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like a rat race right now as to who can get the most places to get the most resources.
Mm-hmm.
So they can shut down the other. That's kind of what this has been for the past, 2 years, 3 years now, from what they've been just bouncing around. Now it's a little bit more public. It's more in the news now, but they've been doing it. Like when they was talking about wanting Greenland and wanting to make Canada the 51st state. All that is about resources and being able to tap into them, because
Right.
if you want to stay the dominant, then you got to control the dominant, and you let China in, and you know that China is slowly closing in on us. They are. And I think they've closed in way more than they should have, because we allowed them to.
Mm-hmm.
We allowed them to come over here and buy land and farm land and buying land near bases and all this other stuff, when you can't go to China and buy nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But they can come here and buy whatever they want. You know what I mean? We've given them that opportunity for them to close in on us. And that's exactly what they're doing. So when you make a phone call and you have a 45-minute conversation with them and you let them know, like, hey, don't raise that up too much because that's going to put us in a bind. And then they know that you about to take a week off. That's exactly what they was going to do. Like you gave them the game plan. Why would they say, oh yeah, no problem. Enjoy your holiday. We'll talk to you on the 2nd. Bullshit. They're going to capitalize on that because you just told them what was wrong. Of course
Mm-hmm.
they're going to do it.
Well,
let
let
me
me
ask
tell
you
you
this.
one. Okay, let me tell you
Go ahead,
one
go
other
ahead.
thing. When I was researching, and again, I stayed up all night watching the activity on the markets, and I was tracking everything up until 12 noon today, and I kind of laid down, took a nap. But while I was up last night, there was a major, systematically important bank in silver's futures, and I guess it's a bank, but they had a collapse last night over a massive silver short. They had betted the market real short. It had went up to, like I said, 83 in China, and they got a margin call that they couldn't pay. And they gave them I think it was 24 hours to come up with the money. And what they had to come up with to cover their losses was $2.3 billion in collateral to stay in business. And they got another phone call at 2 a.m. They didn't have the money. So at 2:47 a.m., the futures exchange shut them down. And they were classified failure to deliver. But right now, that bank ID is being kept secret to prevent a run on the bank. And I find that disturbing, because if they're insolvent and your money's there, you should have a right to know so that you can get your money out of that place before they shut and lock the daggone doors and lock your money in with them. And before somebody says to me, well, your money's insured by the FDIC. Back in the 80s, there was a major bank in my area that paid so much interest rates, it was like investing in a credit union. And that bank went under on just a rumor. People were lined up, and that line stayed out there for a couple hours, and then the bank got tired. The manager locked the door. He would only let people out as they got through for the ones that was in. And that bank went down all around the state of Ohio. And there were so many millions of people that they had to pay off that the FDIC guaranteeing your money 100%, well, that went down to 3 cents on the dollar that they paid off. So you can't sit there and think that, well, my money's guaranteed. No, it's not. 3 cents
Right.
on the dollar, in my opinion, was nothing. And like I said, they're protecting this bank. They're keeping the ID secret, but they couldn't come up with the 2.3 billion. And then we got into this morning and things really got bad. But I'm gonna stop there for you to go ahead. But right now, everything is starting to point toward weaker currencies and higher prices for the people here in the United States. But I'll stop there.
Now I'm gonna jump into how what we're talking about tonight. Like, how does this affect everyday people who don't really trade metals at all? So we're gonna talk about that. And I think that for the most part, most people who don't, if you don't trade and you don't buy silver, you won't feel the actual silver prices directly. You'll feel it through like the electronic costs that you buy, the energy, infrastructure expenses, your EV pricing. Because historically, when metal prices flash that warning sign, the public impact shows up months later as the higher costs rise, and then you got the tighter controls, and then the slight, well, I ain't gonna say slight, it will be the actual increase in all of the stuff that actually uses silver, which silver is basically using everything now. A lot of these like Teslas and a lot of the electric cars, a lot of the GM cars, a lot of the newer electronic components for these TVs, stuff like that. Everything that uses silver actually is going to go up. But the takeaway for everyday people, it isn't to panic. It's to understand that this price stability is often lost before it is publicly acknowledged, because silver just didn't move. It was a signal to the supply chains. It was a signal to the government that there's a problem, and that this has to be fixed and has to be done now before it wipes out everything, especially with them switching those margins the way they did. And we using paper where they're using physical. And then once that paper doesn't add up to what it's supposed to, because isn't that paper supposed to be anywhere between 50 cents to $1 from
Yes.
The difference about that?
Yeah, between the paper and the physical could be no less than 50 cents or no more than $1 within each other. And even right now, there's a broad difference between where they're sitting at right now.
Now, like now when we're talking about the public, so historically, you had like the inflation back in 1970s, where the metal surge before the CPI, and then you had the back in 2008 to 2011, where your gold and your silver prices rose, but on the middle class, the wealth kind of eroded because everything else went up, and then your cost of living rose, and the wages kind of settled, which is what it's been for the past 10 years now. Everything else is going up, but your wages isn't going up. I mean, the actual cost of living to what you are to what the prices are is nowhere in between equal at all. And I mean, and it's steady rising, and it's going to continue to rise. But let's do this, though. I'm gonna ask you this question: what would happen if they were not able to catch this today, and silver jumped over 80, and they were not able to get it to come back down? what would happen?
We would have seen a financial collapse. The Federal Reserve is the buyer of last resort. They put, to save the market today, they injected $34 billion into the repo market. That was to save the banking system and to save the investment system, period. The repo system is the system that banks use to lend money to each other. There was so much blood in the water this morning. Everybody was scrambling to get liquid. A lot of people didn't have the money to cover the margin calls, and they were selling gold and silver out of their own vaults. The ones that had the reserves, the others that didn't, like that one company, they went under. But the Federal Reserve cannot allow a liquidity crisis to stand. They have to step in to bring it to a stop. Now, in 2008, we saw a liquidity crisis, and I don't know if it's Schiffs and Lehman went under then and got that recession started, and we had to bail the banks out by 2011 under Obama, who considered it too big to fail. And the Federal Reserve had to step in, but the American public got charged with the bill. And then in 2020, and that lasted 2 weeks, in 2020, the Federal Reserve had to step in during COVID because it had such an impact on the markets. The markets just kept dropping that they had to inject money in then, and that lasted 30 days. So the Federal Reserve's job is to prevent a liquidity crisis from lasting any length of time. If it lasts a long time, we'd be in a Great Depression. Our markets would all collapse. The stock market would collapse. In fact, today the stock market took, I think, almost a 250 point drop. The Dow did. S&P was down also on just the news of what was going on. If the Federal Reserve didn't step in, man, there would be pure pandemonium, and the public would be the last to find out. The banks were not lending to each other. This morning, things were so crazy that it was every man for himself and God against all. And the Federal Reserve saw that nobody was trying to save the other person, but they knew that, let's say, if I lent you money and you was already in financial trouble and I needed my money back, chances are I wouldn't be able to get it back. And they knew that. That's the reason why they wouldn't lend to each other. So the Fed had to step in through federal intervention and inject liquidity to save everything. And like I said, that 34 billion, they was already doing quantitative easing, but that 34 billion is going to make some serious inflation start to happen. And it shows exactly from 2010 or 2011 when we bailed the banks out because they was investing in the derivative market. And why are they back in trouble again? They are investing in the derivative market, and stuff went south. And we would have been looking at, the Federal Reserve had a choice of an economic collapse or hyperinflation in the United States. That was the choice today. So they had to make a decision which one was the least of the two evils, and they decided to inject the money into the system and just take a chance on the prices coming up on the public. Again, we're catching it on the chin. We're going to pay the bill. But it was blood in the water today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, for the average person on the street, they would have no clue how close they came to the US dollar and the banking system almost collapsing today. They have no idea. And that would have been China's plan. But no matter what, they knew the end result would be a collapse, hyperinflation, or a big squeeze on our system. And I mean, it's almost like they got their hands around our throat right now with what they're doing. And January 2nd will determine if the trap slams shut and how many people get took down with it. That's big time investors. I'm talking people that handle billions and trillions of dollars, not no local fund guy that's only handling millions. We're talking people's retirement accounts and stuff that's going to be in the mix here. But let me stop there for right now.
Do you think that was something that was done basically to show, like, okay, like I could, like, I'm not going to do it to the point that it's going to hurt. I mean, that it's going to hurt you badly, but I'm going to do it just to show you that I can do it.
No, I
And
think that was. I think
because
that was a.
you really don't
Go
want to
ahead.
collapse it because if you collapse it, I mean, of course, like China and Japan, they have, I mean, trillions of dollars in treasury bonds and stuff like that. So they would lose their ass off of that if they actually crashed it. But do you think that with them rising it the way they did, you think that they rose it just to put out a signal to whomever in the administration to say, you know what, like I could really do this to you if I wanted to?
Well, my answer to that is we just witnessed a Pearl Harbor style attack. This was an attack against our system. I'm gonna give an example why I'm saying that. Back when Russia was trying to keep up with us, and I think it was under Reagan, I got laid off for 3 years. We played run me up with Russia so bad that we collapsed their economy. The Berlin Wall came down. Russia lost all those satellite countries because they couldn't afford to hold them no more. Uh, the Iron Wall came down, basically. And their people were so impoverished that they was eating government cheese. They were cashing in their family silverware to try to come up with money. I mean, even some of the wives in the neighborhoods were prostituting themselves, from what I read, on the street corners to try to raise money just so they could eat, not pay bills, just eat. And we did that to them. But in doing that to them, what did it do to us? It put us in a great recession that lasted for over 3 or 4 years. So it hurt us, but we collapsed them. And does China know it would have an effect on them? Sure. But is it the lesser of two evils? Can they collapse us and take over as the world currency and take us down economically without firing a single bullet? I think they made the attempt this morning. No, from December 23rd up to now, Ghost Week, they set the trap. And on January 2nd, we'll be able to see the results of what they tried to pull off. And like I said, they got the Saudis on board. They got the Russians on board. Um, they're talking to people. They're getting their allies ready. That BRIC alliance is not going to be a joke. And like I said, their money is backed by gold. Ours isn't. So that was a direct attack against us. Can we sustain many more of them? I don't think so. I mean, not without going to war. No, I don't think so. I think war would be inevitable at this point if they start to try to hit us on our money again like that. But I'll stop there for right
You
now.
wanna talk about that picture that you wanted me to load up for you tonight?
Yeah. Let's put that up because that goes along with what you're saying about how things are going to affect the American public. I mean, we know that quantitative easing is coming down, and that debases the money. It makes it worth less. Inflation also makes it worth less. If things continue to go like they're going, by 2030, you're looking at the cost of everything. Right now, the level of poverty, the poverty line in the United States is $30,000. So 30,000 or less, you're considered poor. In the not too distant future, if you're making $140,000 or less, you're going to be considered poor in this country. That's how high the cost of everything is going to go up. And Fox News was my source. That came on late at night. I haven't seen it since. I was lucky to get a picture of it before they took it down. But I want people to see cost of food. I mean, when it comes down to it, what makes America America is the ability of people to live a good life. A good life is lived by everything being affordable. So affordability is your ability to own a home, a car, buy essentials in life, food, get decent health care. These are things that makes life worth living. But if you keep devaluing the currency through inflation and you keep just doing things that brings your value, your money down, their money's not going to stretch. The people's money's not going to stretch as far. I mean, in Argentina, they have hyperinflation. A dozen eggs is like $200. Those people are barely getting by and having to grow gardens themselves just to feed themselves. Uh, Americans ain't ready for that type of life. But 2030 ain't that far down the road. And look how expensive some of these costs are. I mean, childcare alone. If I was a person that could see adversity and look for opportunity in adversity, I might would want to consider childcare business, because if I can make $32,773 off of one child, it would behoove me to hire a bunch of people and start being a professional babysitter. So, I mean, there's opportunities here for the person that can see it. But for those that get blindsided and costs keep going up, going up, going up, right now people are already pressed. They're barely getting by. How would they live in a society like this? I mean, me and you talked. I told you if we get silver gets between $100 to $500 an ounce, and gold goes to 10 to 20,000 an ounce, what kind of world are we going to be living in? Will it be one affordable by the average person out here on the street if gold and silver goes that high? What could possibly stop it at this point? Nothing. The people who have it, like the ones in Venezuela, when their economy got destroyed by us, the ones who had gold and silver moved into gated communities that had armed guards. The ones who didn't were using machetes on zoo animals, trying to cut hunks of meat off of them, and going through trash cans trying to find something to eat for their family. But look at those costs and ask yourself, based upon your income right now, in 5 years, can you afford any of this? So again, we've been encouraging people to live below their means, start acquiring savings, start investing, especially in gold and silver. And right now, I can say this is a hint to the wise. Even the news agency is reporting this. So with that little tidbit of information that we're giving you, what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to blow it off and say, it never happened? Or can you look back in your life and say, well, when I was a teenager, $20 bought a whole cart of groceries, but today $20 don't hardly buy nothing. It takes $100 or more to buy a half a cart of groceries. So will things give? No, nothing's got to give. You know, I run into people that recently, they said some things to me, and I thought to myself, that's a poverty mentality you got. I'm through talking to you. One of them said to me, as long as we can get by, that's all that matters. Well, not in the economy that's coming. That's over with. And then another one said to me, things will always work themselves out in the end. I don't have to worry about nothing. Well, when you're living in your car or you're living in a tent, we'll talk about that again then. But right now, if you got those type mentalities, you better do a mindset change. You better start thinking strategically, because things is coming down, and regardless of what happens in this nation, you're responsible for you and your family. So you better be acting accordingly, because nobody's coming to help you. And I'll stop there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're sitting at 104, so we're gonna turn it down for the evening. But I want to say this in closings. But um, this silver move wasn't about greed, and it wasn't about hype, and it wasn't about stress. When strategic metals start behaving like this, it puts out warning signals, and it means that the world is changing. It's changing quietly, it's changing unevenly, and it's changing without permission. The real question we need to ask ourselves isn't where silver goes next. It's whether the system is ready for what's just been revealed. So we're going to close this off for the evening. So I want everybody to pay attention to what it is that we're putting out there. Like, follow, share, subscribe. Send this out to people that you know that don't know or don't have any idea about this show, because the stuff that we're putting out is vital to people. I mean, if you go back with the next 6, 7, 8 shows that we've done, everything that we've done in those shows pertains to something that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
We could go back and actually play all those shows all over again and put them on here, and nobody would even know that it would be a rerun, because it's all dealing with stuff that's going on right now, every single thing. And what makes it so bad is that the stuff that we did on those shows 4, 5, 6, 7 months ago was stuff that we were talking about that could happen. And now we're talking about the stuff that actually is happening based off of the shows that we did 6, 7, 8 months ago, saying that this was getting ready to take place. And I know a lot of times when me and you, Aaron, talking, and I say the baddest part about doing this show is that we're right too much. Because the way that we're thinking and the way that we're putting this stuff out there is like, you know, this isn't just content that we put out here. We putting this stuff out here because we genuinely care about the people that we putting this message out to try to help as many people as we can, because it's coming. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. And the quicker you can be prepared for this, the better off you are. So, as I said before, thank you all for coming. Like, follow, share, subscribe. Hit the like button. Hit that like button. That's better than any donation that you could possibly do. But before you go off, and I see there's quite a few people that's on here watching right now, stop what you're doing. Hit that like button on your way out, please. That's what gets this show out on the proper algorithm, to get the right people to see the right information, to get this out to as many people as possible. So until next week, Happy New Year to everyone. Happy anniversary to the Diamond Effect. Happy anniversary to all the people that have came in throughout the years to watch these shows and comment and support us the way that you have. I appreciate it. Much love to you. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I'm going to say right now, everything points to our currency becoming weaker and higher prices. So plan to live below your means. Do what your grandparents did. But using the charge cards, pay for stuff in cash. You can wait. You can sacrifice and get there. Don't take on a bunch of debt right now. Build that food pantry. Build your skills to where you can do more stuff yourself, so you don't have to pay other people to do things. Start thinking strategically. Start planning. This is the most important thing right now. This is no conspiracy theory. The future, especially 2026, is going to be rough. And if you position yourself right, you'll weather the storm. If you don't, you're going to get rolled over. I mean, there's an old saying in Napoleon Hill's book called The Science of Success that life can be compared to the ride of a wild horse. You either ride life or life rides you. Choice is yours. I'll stop there.
Well, like I said before, appreciate everyone for coming out. Like, follow, share, subscribe, pass us on. And we'll see you all in 7 days. Peace, love to everyone.
Four.